She is a five-time Olympic gold medalist, a four-time WNBA champion, the managing director of the USA women's national team, the co-host of A Touch More with Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe, and now the co-host, excuse me, the only host of the Bird's Eye View podcast. We have the pleasure in welcoming Sue Bird onto Hoopsology. Welcome, Sue.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on to the show. Really appreciate it. Before we delve into just the myriad of opportunities that you have, I want to jump into our first question. We're a podcast about the culture of basketball. We delve into the hottest topics within the WNBA and the NBA, but we delve into the game of basketball. What makes it so great? Why do people have a connection to this game compared to other sports? So take this question any way you want it. What is your first or favorite basketball memory?
Oh my gosh. I think my first basketball memory is actually going to a Knick game. I was probably like 5 or 6 years old, maybe seven, and I didn't know it at the time, but it actually was Michael Jordan's rookie year. And so the Knicks were playing the Bulls, and I vividly remember. I remember being in the Garden. I remember the players dunking in warm-ups and being amazed by this. I remember the feel. I remember the crowd noise. I remember all of it. And I feel really lucky for an early memory like that because immediately I was drawn to everything about the game.
No, that's amazing, especially appropriate timing based on the recording of this podcast last night in Madison Square Garden. Some memories made there. I want to delve into your duties as managing director of USA's women's national team. Can you take our audience through the journey of how that happened, and then what goals do you have just for Team USA in the future?
Yeah, as far as the journey goes, the women's team was using a committee prior, a committee to select the coach, a committee to select the team. The men's program, on the other hand, had throughout time different managing directors, Jerry Colangelo, and then most recently Grant Hill. So I think for the women's program, it was something that for the last couple years they were debating on switching from a committee to a managing director. And so I had some like preliminary conversations with the higher ups at USA Basketball, Jim Tooley, General Dempsey. And then I would say probably now, like sitting here now, probably like a little less than a year ago, maybe over the summer and then into the fall and winter of 2024, the conversations really post Olympics, actually, the conversations started to get a little more serious. I started talking to Grant Hill, picking his brain, listening to his experience with being the managing director. And at that point, they knew they were doing the switch and it was just about finding the right person. And, for me, it just became about, does this make sense? Do I want to do it? Do I feel passionate about it? And I did.
So,
And it's, oh, sorry. As far as
yeah,
the goals go,
yeah,
it's a gold medal.
of course.
It's pretty much it.
Gotcha. That's the end game. I want to shift to your bird's eye view podcast. I just find this medium so interesting for yourself already having a successful podcast with Megan. What do you hope to accomplish with this current venture? Delving into more of the WNBA culture. We've seen some NBA counterpart podcasts do really well, delving into the game, the X's and O's. What is kind of your philosophy with this new venture?
Yeah, well, I'll actually start with a touch more. Doing our podcast with Megan, two things. One, what I learned in podcasting is, well, really anytime you're building something, you have an idea of what you might think it is going in, and then you have to kind of let it grow into what it's going to be naturally and authentically. And I think with me and Megan, that's definitely been the journey with a touch more, just kind of letting both of us feel things out. And as we got into it and we started covering the WNBA specifically, I was just feeling like I wanted to do more there. I was feeling like I wanted to have more conversations. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the actual basketball. And that's kind of where the idea for Bird's Eye View came from. And now that I'm starting to record and I'm doing interviews with players, I can already sense that I may have thought it was gonna be one thing going in, but it's gonna find its own lane, and so far, I feel like that lane has been just an organic conversation between myself, a former player who's really seen it all, done it all, and current players who are in the throes of their own career and getting to ask them about, what makes them the player they are, getting to ask them about maybe it's a move they added, a shot they added, getting to ask them about their teams and how they see their teams, coming together as the WNBA season unfolds. So it's going to have a little bit of everything, but the North Star of it will always be the basketball. That's always going to be. So maybe some days we get a little more in the stats and the X's and O's. And maybe for some players, it's more of a mindset and how they approach the game. And then on top of that, at the start of now that the season has started, the WNBA season, at the start of pretty much every show, I'll get to kind of highlight just the different things I'm seeing. Maybe it's a player, maybe it's a team, maybe it's an action. And then, yeah, we're off and running. So we'll just see how it goes.
When you're conducting these interviews, do you find that with the athletes you're talking with, they feel that it's s- I would say, safer space with you compared to regular media members? I find we're listening to athlete podcasts, they're just kind of let their guard down. They're willing to just divulge more information. You get a more authentic picture of who they are compared to in a press conference or just in a traditional media setting. Do you find that with you when you're conducting your interviews?
Yeah, I do. I think some of it is that I have previous relationships with these players. Like I know them. Some of them are close friends, some of them are former teammates. And even if I don't know them well, I've played against them for so many years that I think there is just something comforting about that and comfortable about that. I'm not trying to go on there and have any gotcha moments. I'm just trying to have like normal conversations, the kind that we would have if we didn't have microphones in front of our faces and really get to know these players. And I think, a wonderful byproduct, could be, hopefully will be that these players get to show not different sides of themselves, but just the real side, right? Like who they really are, how they really approach the game, how they really think about things. Cause I think sometimes, uh, nowadays you do have to be a little worried of what you put out there. And I think because they know I'm coming from a good place, you can just kind of talk about the game.
No, that totally makes sense. What do you want? What is one of the biggest misconceptions that fans always miss when either watching the W or the NBA? Something that is obvious to you, but fans bring up something that's always a talking point, but it could have like damaging effects in terms of how the game of basketball is talked about. Is there one thing you're just like, why is this being discussed? This is obviously what happened in these games. This should be the main storyline. What are kind of things that fans should pay attention to and not worry about? Kind of the noise and everything that's usually discussed on social media or on national TV.
Yeah, well, obviously, in the world of women's basketball, we're seeing a lot of narratives get formed based on how players are playing on the court. In the last season for sure, and then we're seeing it already at the start of this season. Just physical play, between two athletes who are on the court being competitive, as if women can't do that and not hate each other. But you see athletes being competitive and being physical, and the narratives that get formed get taken out of context and get taken out of sport and get taken out of competition. So that's first and foremost. Obviously, we're all seeing it. Sadly, it's I don't see it stopping because of the way that social media works, but that is a huge misconception that women aren't competitive, that we don't have moments on the court where things get heated, but also that it has meaning that it doesn't, because it doesn't. I can promise you that there's no deeper meaning here. I think if I were to pick one other thing though, it would kind of be this idea that I actually just talked about it on a pod a little bit, my bird's eye view pod this week, or which will come out on Friday. Just this idea that if you have a really talented team, right? And nowadays we like to call them super teams, whether it's a super team or not is irrelevant. If you have a really talented team that's in their first year together, I think people assume that the talent can speed up the chemistry process, can speed up the journey that a team has to go to develop that chemistry. And that's just not the case. Super teams don't get put together and then and the next day they're already, they should be in the finals immediately. That's not how it works. It still takes time.
No, I agree. It's fascinating to hear because usually when a super team is formed, there's all these expectations of that team immediately just dominating the league. When you're saying realistically, it's a time to realize chemistry, how players play with each other, personalities. There's a lot of things that go into it. So I think you're
Yeah.
exactly right.
I would actually argue that super teams, since we're calling it that, let's just call it super talented teams.
There you go.
Um, I would argue that can take longer than if you've maybe had a really good team with a core three that added some role players. So it's a little bit of it's a different mix there, and it sometimes can take longer. I think people jump the gun if they don't play well in the first like week of the season.
No, totally agree. I want to jump in and get your opinion on 3x3. I think it's a fascinating form of the game. We've seen not only Unrivaled, but the Big Three, international play really take off with 3x3. What is your opinion of this form of basketball? I grew up just going to Hoop It Up. That was 3-on-3, just local tournaments, this around the neighborhood. So, do you think this form of the game has a chance to really catch on and be a spinoff of what we currently see with the major leagues?
I played in Hoop It Up. I know all about Hoop It Up. Yeah, I think 3-on-3 is an exciting form of basketball. It's totally different from 5-on-5. I mean, I can't even get into to all the ways in which it's different. I think what's cool about it is you might have some players that are better at 3-on-3 than they are at 5-on-5, and vice versa. So, do I think it's going to be a part of the basketball landscape? Absolutely. Personally, I think anytime you have a sport that's an Olympic sport, there's always a chance for it to grow and build because that gives young kids, it gives college players, it gives professional players something to strive for that goes beyond just just the idea of making money, right? Like being an Olympian always gives ambition. So that's kind of see how I see 3-on-3, and it's to me like a great supplement to what we have going on in our country, right? You mentioned Unrivaled, amazing supplement for the WNBA, and vice versa. You mentioned the big three, amazing supplement for the NBA and vice versa. So it is exciting that there's just more ways to get on the court and more ways for fans to engage. There might be people who prefer it. You know, the games are fast, they're quick, a lot of scoring, very physical. There might be people that prefer that from a fan standpoint.
No, totally agree. I want to jump into Diana Taurasi interviewed a current play-by-play commentator for the Phoenix Mercury a couple of weeks ago, and just he was just symbolizing how Taurasi is Phoenix. She is the Phoenix Mercury, just how much impact she has and how they name, I believe, the practice court after her, just in
Mhm.
terms of just her legacy is always going to be there no matter what. Just your opinion on just not only her career, but impact on the game and just her future. Where do you think, what's next for her, do you think?
I mean, I'll start at the end. What's next for her is really whatever she wants. I do think when you first retire, you need a little bit of like a detox period. So she's probably, hanging out. I mean, I know she's hanging out. She's hanging out with her family, spending time with her kids. But really, whatever Diana wants to do, she can do. That's the type of person she is. She obviously has the resume from a playing standpoint that's going to get her into any room she wants, but she also has a charisma about her that I really believe whatever, if she wants to be in front of the camera, she can. If she wants to do this, she can. That she can. Whatever she wants. And that actually ties nicely into just her legacy. I think she really left a mark on the city of Phoenix and on the league itself. She, in my opinion, is the greatest player of all time. She won on every level. And beyond that, she had a way of making people feel, honestly, period, making people feel. She makes you feel when you watch her play. She makes you feel when you're her teammate. She makes you feel. And I think that's really special. And that's where her mark is truly left. Anyone who has ever come in contact with D, like I said, played with D, played against D, you have a memory, you have a story. And that really speaks to who she is. And again, her impact on this game, immeasurable. And what we're seeing is a lot of players who, obviously I'm in that group too because we stayed with our franchises our entire career. Tamika Catchings comes up, Lisa Leslie comes to mind. These are you're gonna look back and I can't really pull what the comp would be from an NBA standpoint, but kind of like Bill Russell with the Celtics. You're gonna see like these are the players that were at these franchises from like almost day one and really set the tone. And that's D in Phoenix.
Yeah, totally agree. Last question for you. Current season of the W. What are some storylines that fans are missing that they should be paying attention to that are going to matter when we get into the playoffs or the final stretch of the season? What are things that they should be targeting in terms of keeping their eyes out for?
Yeah, I think the Minnesota Lynx is the first team that comes to mind. This is a team that last year kind of like flew under the radar a little bit, and then boom, they're in the finals. Nafisa Collier, I feel like really last season entered the MVP conversation in a way that is just different. She took her game to another level, and you're seeing that again this year. But when you look at kind of all the rankings, of course, the New York Liberty, and I actually think New York Liberty is still the favorite. They won last year. They added a bunch of talent in free agency. So I still think they're the favorite, right? Like you have to dethrone them in a sense. But a lot of people like to talk about the Indiana Fever, rightfully so. A lot of people like to talk about the Las Vegas Aces, rightfully so. These are teams that have earned to be talked about. But interestingly, Minnesota, even though they made the finals, they still, even from last year to this year, floating under that radar a little bit. So I have my eye on them. I think that's one storyline that is interesting because it only fuels them. They're already on a little bit of like a redemption revenge tour, and I think not getting talked about is going to fuel them even more. So I got my eye on them.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that'll serve as motivation for them. Sue, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Can you let our audience know where you can find your podcast, any other ventures that you have going for the rest of the years? This is truly an honor. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. No, this is it for my ventures. But you can always check out a touch more of the podcast. You can check out Bird's Eye View. Honestly, wherever you get your podcasts, you guys know how to do that now.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sue. Much appreciated.
Thank you.